Hey everyone, this is Darcy with preservingmysanity.com. Just wanted to come on for a few minutes today and talk about what you can do with all of those green tomatoes. So if your garden is like ours, you probably have quite a few tomatoes left on your vines, and maybe your plants are starting to die. Maybe you've already had your first frost, or you might be having it soon. Regardless what the situation is, you probably have green tomatoes and you don't know what to do with them. So I just wanted to share a few things today that we like to do with ours. So we actually haven't had really a first frost in our garden yet, but we have been picking some green tomatoes. We actually end up picking most of our tomatoes while they're green because we ripen them in the windowsills. It prevents our chickens from getting into them. It prevents other birds from getting them and other things that can happen. So we end up picking a lot of tomatoes when they're almost ready. The first thing I wanted to kind of talk about is you don't really want to pick them green when they're really green. Like, you can tell the difference as they're growing on the vine because they'll be kind of dark green, and I have one here to show you. I don't know if it'll come through on the video, but this tomato is kind of dark green on the top and it's a little lighter green on the bottom. But as they're growing on the vine, they start out and they're really dark green. You don't really want to pick them when they're like that because they're going to be really hard, and then they're just not really exactly what you want. But as they start to ripen, they get a little lighter green, like this one. This one's kind of small, but you can see that this one's lighter green all the way around. So this is sort of like when you would pick it to use as a green tomato. So sometimes, like especially if it freezes too early, I'm in Minnesota, so sometimes there will be tomatoes that just started growing and it'll freeze, and there's not really a whole lot you can do with those. But as long as they're a little further along and green like this, there are some things you can do. So the first thing you can do is, like I mentioned, you can actually ripen them in the house. You can put them, we put them in containers in our windowsills and just let them ripen in the sun. I know some people put them in boxes with newspaper and that helps them ripen. So, potentially you can have ripe tomatoes to eat 4 to 6 weeks after you take the green ones in the house like this. As they ripen, you can eat them or do other things with them. The second thing you can do is, of course, everybody's heard of fried green tomatoes. We lived in North Carolina for a lot of years. I lived there for 11 years, and my husband lived there for longer. So we love fried green tomatoes. We make them pretty often. We just make them, on the side of whatever dinner you're having. You basically just dredge them in some cornmeal and flour mixture, some seasoning, and fry them in butter. Eat them that way. We've also made fried green tomato BLTs, which are really good. So just instead of using your red tomatoes, you use fried green tomatoes on those sandwiches. Something I tried new this year, as far as using those green tomatoes, is I actually picked a bunch of green tomatoes this weekend and I canned them in slices. So I saw this on the blog for a farm girl in the making. She's got a cookbook out. She's a homesteader. And I've kind of always thought about doing this, and I had seen kind of mixed reviews in some groups about how they just turn to mush and they don't work right and all of these things. But I went ahead and gave it a try this year. Her blog post basically said that it works pretty well, and then when it's time to fry them, you just kind of do it a little hotter. So you bread them and you fry them, and you just don't want to cook them super long because they're already cooked and they do get kind of soft, she said in her blog post, but basically it's better than not having fried green tomatoes at all. So I did that for the first time this weekend. I'm pretty excited about trying those. One other thing that we usually do with ours is we make green tomato jam. So it's actually a recipe for green tomato bacon jam from Farm Fresh Feasts. I can share these links in the comments too, you guys, but it's a recipe for green tomato jam, and her recipe has bacon in it. This particular jar actually doesn't have bacon in it because when you can't can it because of the bacon. So you can just make it, and we usually freeze it in either jars or freezer bags. But if you put the bacon in it, you can only freeze it for like up to 6 months. So last year when I made it, I actually just made a really big batch and I didn't put any bacon in it. So then when we take it out of the freezer to use it, you know, we can just fry some bacon and add it to it that way. So that way it stays better, longer in the freezer. What do you do with it? Once you have the bacon in there, it's really good on pork chops. That's how we eat it most of the time. You can also mix it into hamburgers. That's what she talks about in her blog. So there's some fun ways that you can do it there. I know some people also make green tomato jam and flavor it with like different fruit. I haven't really done that in a while, but so you can make jam. That's about all that we do with ours, actually. I've seen recipes for like green tomato relish, green tomato chow chow, things like that that you can also make and can. But we usually just eat them, fry them, make jam with them, and then like I showed you, we tried canning some slices for the first time this year. So maybe when we try those out of the jar in a few months, I can report back and tell you how they are. But like I said, I'll share the links in the comments. And if you have any other great ideas for what we can do with green tomatoes, feel free to share those with us too. Have a good day, guys. Thanks. Bye.